Ambassador Thekval of the Korthari Diplomatic Corps had witnessed many historic moments in her 3 centuries of service, but nothing had prepared her for the tension crackling through the Galactic Assembly Chamber today. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive amphitheater, their varied forms creating a living mosaic of galactic civilization. Yet, despite the diversity, every being present shared the same expression of nervous anticipation. Today, they would meet the humans. Thekval adjusted her ceremonial robes with 2 of her 6 arms while reviewing the briefing materials one final time. The data was sparse, almost frustratingly so. Humanity had emerged from a small yellow star system approximately 18 months ago, announcing their presence with a simple message broadcast across all known frequencies. Greetings from the Human Republic. We come in peace and seek dialogue with galactic civilization. What made this first contact unique wasn't the message itself. Many species made similar announcements when they achieved faster-than-light travel. What made it extraordinary was how they had delivered it. The signal hadn't come from a small exploration vessel or a modest diplomatic craft, as was standard for newly spacefaring species. Instead, it had originated from what could only be described as a mobile city. The Veselov, such a term even applied, measured over 40 kilometers in length and massed approximately 3 billion tons. For comparison, the largest ship in the Assembly's peacekeeping fleet massed barely 50 million tons. Ambassador Thekval chittered Fleet Commander Zektar from the seat beside her. The insectoid Hivari's compound eyes reflected the chamber's bioluminescent lighting as he spoke. Your analysis of their propulsion signatures remains troubling. How does a newly spacefaring species develop gravitational manipulation technology that surpasses our most advanced research? Thekval's primary head nodded thoughtfully, while her secondary head monitored the chamber's communication feeds. Perhaps they aren't as newly spacefaring as we assumed, Commander. The Sol system showed no signs of industrial space activity until approximately 50 years ago, but that doesn't mean they weren't developing technology planetside. 50 years from first orbital mechanics to gravitational drive systems. Zektar's mandibles clicked skeptically. That would represent the fastest technological advancement in recorded galactic history. Most species require 3 to 5 centuries to develop even basic gravity manipulation. Before Thekval could respond, the chamber's alert harmonics began resonating through the amphitheater. The massive display screens around the chamber's perimeter activated, showing real-time sensor feeds from the Assembly's monitoring stations positioned throughout the star system. There, at the edge of sensor range, space itself seemed to ripple and fold. The distortion grew larger and more defined until reality literally tore open, revealing a tunnel through folded spacetime that shouldn't have been possible to create or navigate. What emerged from that impossible portal defied every assumption the Assembly had made about newcomer capabilities. The human ship was enormous beyond comprehension. The initial estimates of 40 kilometers had been conservative. Detailed scanning revealed a vessel that stretched nearly 60 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull bristling with structures whose purpose could only be guessed at. The ship's design seemed to blend organic curves with geometric precision, creating something that looked simultaneously grown and constructed. But size alone wasn't what caused the collective intake of breath that echoed through the Assembly chamber. It was the power readings. By the Great Void, whispered Science Director Elith Mora from the Crystalline Collective. Those energy signatures. They're reading fusion reactions at the core, but the output levels suggest matter-antimatter annihilation at industrial scales. Ambassador Thekval felt her diplomatic training struggling to maintain composure as she watched the readings cascade across her personal display. The human vessel wasn't just large, it was actively demonstrating technology that pushed the boundaries of theoretical physics. Are those stellar engineering signatures? Asked Trade Coordinator Vexnan of the Merchant Alliance, his usually steady voice carrying a tremor of disbelief. Fleet Commander Zektar's compound eyes focused intently on the tactical displays. Confirmed. They're manipulating nuclear fusion at the stellar level within artificial containment fields. The power output from their propulsion systems alone exceeds the total energy production of most member worlds. As if aware of the scrutiny, the massive human vessel began to slow its approach, demonstrating a level of precision that seemed impossible for something of its size. The gravitational wake from its passage caused measurable fluctuations in the space station's position, yet the ship maneuvered with the delicacy of a precision instrument. Incoming communication, announced the chamber's AI system. Source: human vessel. Message format appears compatible with standard galactic protocols. A new voice filled the chamber, unmistakably alien, yet somehow familiar in its rhythm and intonation. When the translation software finished processing the linguistic patterns, the words that emerged carried an unexpected warmth. Greetings, representatives of the Galactic Assembly. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Republic ship Endeavour. We request permission to approach and establish formal diplomatic relations with your organization. We come in peace, carrying greetings from Earth and all humanity. The simplicity of the message contrasted sharply with the overwhelming display of technological capability that carried it. Ambassador Thekval found herself facing a contradiction that challenged every protocol in the diplomatic handbook. How did one conduct first contact with a species that appeared to be both newcomers and technological superiors simultaneously? Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the HRS Endeavour, watching the Galactic Assembly Station grow larger on the main display. After 18 months of careful observation and preparation, humanity was finally ready to announce themselves to galactic civilization. The weight of representing her entire species sat heavily on her shoulders, but she felt ready for the challenge. The Endeavour wasn't humanity's largest ship. That distinction belonged to the massive construction vessels working in the outer Sol system, but it had been specifically designed for this moment. Every system, every structural detail, every technological demonstration had been carefully planned to make the right impression on their galactic neighbors. Status report, she called to her crew. All systems operating within normal parameters, Captain, replied Commander James Park, her executive officer. Gravitational drives maintaining stable field geometry. Fusion reactors running at 12% capacity, all diplomatic protocols ready for implementation. Sarah nodded, noting the subtle emphasis on their power levels. 12% capacity was more than enough to maintain their current operations, but it also left considerable room for demonstration if necessary. The message was carefully calculated. They were operating well within their capabilities. Communications. Signal our approach vector to assembly traffic control. Make sure they have clear sensor readings on our drive signature and mass distribution. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos, their communications officer, smiled as she implemented the order. Aye, Captain, broadcasting approach data now. Should we also transmit our technical specifications? Not yet. Let them draw their own conclusions for now. Sarah had studied the preliminary intelligence reports on galactic civilization extensively. Humanity had been monitoring radio and subspace communications for decades before making contact, building a comprehensive picture of the political and technological landscape they were entering. What they discovered was both encouraging and concerning. The Galactic Assembly appeared to be a genuine diplomatic organization focused on peaceful interaction and mutual benefit among member species. However, their technological development seemed to have stagnated, with most innovations focused on refinement rather than breakthrough advances. Humanity, by contrast, had spent the last century in a period of explosive technological growth. What appeared impossible to galactic civilization was merely challenging to human engineers. Captain, called Lieutenant Kim from the sensor station, I'm detecting increased activity from the assembly station. Multiple ships are moving to observation positions, and their long-range scanners are conducting detailed analysis of our hull configuration. Sarah checked the tactical display, noting the positions of various alien vessels. None appeared to be taking aggressive stances, but their interest was clearly intense. Any hostile movements? Negative, Captain. All vessels are maintaining respectful distances. However, I am detecting what appears to be emergency communications traffic between the station and several of the observing ships. Commander Park moved closer to Sarah's command chair. Think we're making them nervous? I'd be surprised if we weren't. According to our intelligence, the largest ship in their peacekeeping fleet masses about 50 million tons. We're 60 times larger than that. Sarah had to admit that the Endeavour was an impressive sight. The ship's hull incorporated breakthrough materials science that allowed for both incredible strength and surprising flexibility. The outer armor could absorb and dissipate energy levels that would vaporize conventional materials, while the internal structure used principles borrowed from biology to distribute stress and damage across redundant systems. More importantly, the Endeavour had been designed to be obviously powerful without appearing threatening. Every weapon system was concealed within the hull structure, while the visible elements emphasized exploration, research, and peaceful contact. "Captain, we're receiving a response from Assembly Traffic Control," Lieutenant Commander Santos reported. They're asking us to maintain our current distance while they prepare appropriate docking facilities." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Appropriate facilities?" "Apparently, Captain, their largest docking bay is designed for ships up to 15 million tons. They need time to reconfigure their approach." The bridge crew exchanged glances. This was their first direct confirmation that humanity's ship construction capabilities far exceeded galactic norms. Sarah made a mental note to emphasize in their diplomatic presentations that the Endeavour was merely a diplomatic vessel, not a military one. Acknowledge their request and maintain position. Use the time to run full passive scans of their station and the observing vessels. I want detailed analysis of their technology levels, defensive capabilities, and power systems. As the crew began their analysis, Sarah reflected on the careful balance they needed to maintain. Humanity wanted to be respected as equals in galactic civilization, not feared as potential conquerors. But they also couldn't afford to be seen as primitives who could be easily manipulated or threatened. The Endeavour represented humanity's attempt to thread that needle, impressive enough to command respect, peaceful enough to avoid panic, advanced enough to ensure they were taken seriously. Whether they had succeeded would become clear in the next few hours. Ambassador Thekval watched through the observation deck's transparent aluminum viewport as the human ship maneuvered into position near the assembly station. Even at a distance of several thousand kilometers, the vessel's sheer scale was overwhelming. The Endeavour dwarfed everything in the vicinity, including the station itself. "Preliminary analysis complete," reported Science Director Elif Mora, her crystalline form refracting the starlight in complex patterns. "The results are unprecedented." Thekval turned from the viewport to face the Science Director. "Elaborate." "Their hull material appears to be some form of programmable matter composite that can alter its properties in real time. The energy distribution through their superstructure suggests internal systems operating on principles we don't fully understand. And their gravitational drive." Elif Mora paused, her harmonic resonance carrying undertones of wonder. "Their gravitational drive is creating localized distortions in spacetime that our best theoretical models say shouldn't be possible." Fleet Commander Zektar's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Are you saying they possess technology that violates known physics?" "Not violates," Elif Mora corrected. "Extends. They appear to have discovered applications of unified field theory that we've only theorized about. The power requirements alone should be staggering, yet their energy emissions suggest they're operating well below maximum capacity." Before anyone could respond, the chamber's communication system activated again. The human captain's voice carried the same warm confidence as before, but now there was an additional undertone that the translation systems identified as anticipation. "Assembly Traffic Control, this is Captain Chen. We appreciate your patience as you prepare docking facilities. In the meantime, we'd like to request permission to deploy a small shuttle for preliminary diplomatic contact. The shuttle will carry myself and a small diplomatic team." Thekval exchanged glances with her colleagues. This was an interesting development. Most first contact protocols involved extended communication before any physical meeting, but the humans seemed confident enough to proceed directly to face-to-face interaction. "What are your thoughts, Ambassador?" asked Fleet Commander Zektar. Thekval considered the options carefully. Standard protocol suggested caution, extended remote communication, and gradual development of trust before physical contact. However, the humans had already demonstrated capabilities that rendered most security concerns moot. If they intended harm, their massive ship could presumably accomplish it regardless of whether diplomats met in person. "I recommend we accept their request," she said finally. "They're clearly operating from a position of strength, yet they're offering to put their leadership at potential risk by boarding our station. That suggests genuine peaceful intent." "Unless it's a confidence play," Zektar noted darkly, "demonstrate such overwhelming superiority that we don't even consider resistance." "If that's the case," Elif Mora observed, "then the demonstration has already been made. Their ship's capabilities speak for themselves." Thekval activated her communication authorization. "Assembly Control, this is Ambassador Thekval. Please inform the humans that we accept their request for shuttle-based diplomatic contact. We'll meet them in the primary diplomatic suite." The response came within moments. "Understood, Assembly Control. Shuttle launch in 30 minutes. We're transmitting the diplomatic team manifest now." As the data arrived, Thekval reviewed the human delegation with interest. Captain Sarah Chen, their military leader, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, listed as a xenobiologist and cultural specialist. Ambassador Michael Thompson, their designated diplomatic representative. And, surprisingly, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, identified as a theoretical physicist. "They're bringing a physicist to first contact," Zektar wondered aloud. "Perhaps they expect technical discussions," Elif Mora suggested. "Or perhaps they want someone who can answer questions about their technology." Thekval suspected the inclusion of Dr. Tanaka was more significant than it appeared. In her experience, species only brought technical specialists to diplomatic meetings when they expected those specialists to be needed. This suggested the humans anticipated questions about their capabilities that would require expert-level responses. 25 minutes later, the human shuttle appeared on sensors, and Thekval understood why they had been confident about face-to-face meetings. The shuttle itself was larger than many species' primary diplomatic vessels, yet it moved with the same impossible precision as its mothership. "Shuttle approaching Docking Bay 7. Announced the station's traffic control AI. Note, the shuttle's mass is reading at approximately 5,000 tons. Bay 7 is rated for vessels up to 3,000 tons maximum." Thekval felt a moment of concern before the AI continued its report. "Update. The shuttle is modifying its mass distribution through unknown means. Current effective mass now reading at 2,000 tons and stable." Even their shuttle demonstrated technology beyond assembly understanding. As Thekval made her way to the diplomatic suite, she found herself wondering whether humanity's emergence into galactic civilization would be remembered as the moment everything changed. She suspected it would. The diplomatic suite aboard the assembly station had hosted first contact meetings with dozens of species over the centuries, but Ambassador Thekval had never felt the weight of history quite as acutely as she did now. The chamber's adaptive environment systems had configured themselves for human comfort based on the biological data included in their transmissiona atmospheric mix, similar to many other oxygen-breathing species. Gravity at Earth normal levels, and lighting in the spectrum, humans identified as comfortable. When the doors opened to admit the human delegation, Thekval's first thought was how remarkably ordinary they appeared. After witnessing the technological marvels of their ship and shuttle, she had perhaps expected beings that looked as advanced as their technology. Instead, she found herself facing 4 individuals who could have been representatives of any number of bipedal species she had encountered. Captain Sarah Chen entered first, and Thekval immediately understood why she held command. The human moved with controlled confidence, her dark eyes taking in every detail of the chamber and its occupants without appearing to stare. Her bearing suggested someone accustomed to responsibility and comfortable with authority. Dr. Elena Rodriguez followed, her attention immediately drawn to the diverse alien representatives in the chamber. As a xenobiologist, she was clearly fascinated by the variety of life forms present. Ambassador Michael Thompson appeared to be studying the diplomatic protocols and formal arrangements, while Dr. Yuki Tanaka seemed more interested in the station's technical systems visible through the chamber's transparent sections. "Welcome to the Galactic Assembly," Thekval said, activating the translation protocols. "I am Ambassador Thekval of the Korthari Diplomatic Corps. On behalf of all member species, we greet humanity and welcome you to galactic civilization." Captain Chen stepped forward slightly, a gesture that the cultural analysis software identified as taking formal responsibility for the group. Thank you, Ambassador Thekval. I am Captain Sarah Chen, representing the Human Republic and speaking for Earth. We bring greetings from our homeworld and express our hope for peaceful relations with all species represented here. The formal introductions proceeded smoothly, but Thekval noticed that each member of the assembly delegation seemed more interested in studying the humans than in following protocol. She couldn't blame them. This first contact would reshape galactic civilization one way or another. Captain Chen, she began once the formalities were complete, your arrival has generated considerable interest throughout the assembly. Your vessel represents technological capabilities that we find remarkable for a newly spacefaring species. Captain Chen smiled, an expression that the translation systems indicated conveyed friendliness and slight amusement. I appreciate your directness, Ambassador. Yes, the Endeavor represents some of our more advanced engineering, but I should clarify that humanity has been spacefaring for longer than our recent emergence might suggest. Fleet Commander Zektar leaned forward, his compound eyes focusing intently on the human captain. Our monitoring networks detected no significant industrial activity in your star system until approximately 50 years ago. Are you suggesting our sensors were insufficient? Dr. Tanaka spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the careful precision of someone accustomed to explaining complex concepts. Commander, your sensors were quite adequate for detecting the activities they were designed to monitor. However, much of humanity's space development took place on the far side of our system's outer planets, using construction methods that produce minimal electromagnetic emissions. Science Director Yilith Mora's crystalline structure brightened with interest. Are you referring to distributed manufacturing using asteroid-based resources? Among other techniques, Dr. Beishin. Tanaka confirmed. We found it more efficient to establish manufacturing facilities in locations rich in raw materials rather than transporting those materials to established industrial centers. Thekval noted the careful phrasing. The humans were acknowledging advanced capabilities without providing detailed explanations of their methods. This suggested sophisticated diplomatic preparation. Dr. Tanaka, Elith Mora continued, the gravitational manipulation technology your ship employs analysis suggests principles that extend beyond current theoretical understanding. Would you be willing to discuss the fundamentals? Dr. Tanaka exchanged a quick glance with Captain Chen before responding. I'd be happy to share some general principles, Director. We discovered that what you call unified field theory can be practically applied when you treat spacetime as a programmable medium rather than a fixed framework. The silence that followed this statement stretched for several seconds. Thekval realized that Dr. Tanaka had just casually described a breakthrough that had eluded galactic civilization's best scientists for millennia. Programmable spacetime, Elith Mora repeated slowly. You're suggesting that the fundamental structure of reality can be modified? Within limits, Dr. Tanaka said with the same casual confidence. The energy requirements are substantial, which is why we developed improved fusion techniques to provide adequate power. Ambassador Thompson seemed to sense that the conversation was moving into territory that might overwhelm their hosts. Perhaps we should focus on the diplomatic implications of our arrival. He suggested smoothly. Humanity is interested in establishing trade relationships, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense agreements with compatible species. Fleet Commander Zektar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Mutual defense. Commander, given the capabilities you've demonstrated, what threats could possibly concern humanity? Captain Chen's expression grew more serious. Commander, the galaxy is a large place, and we've detected signs of civilizations that operate very differently from the assembly. Some appear to be actively hostile to organic life. Others show expansion patterns that suggest resource conflicts may be inevitable. Thekval felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. You've detected hostile civilizations? Several, Dr. Rodriguez confirmed. Our deep space monitoring has identified at least 3 distinct expansion patterns that suggest aggressive, resource-consuming species or technologies. None appear to be immediate threats, but we believe in preparing for long-term challenges. The implication was clear. Humanity hadn't just developed advanced technology for exploration or prestige. They had built their capabilities in response to perceived threats that the Assembly apparently hadn't detected. "We would be very interested in sharing this intelligence," Thekval said carefully. "The Assembly's primary purpose is maintaining peace and cooperation among member species. We'd be happy to provide our analysis." Captain Chen replied. "However, I should mention that humanity's membership in the Assembly would depend on whether our governing principles are compatible with your organization's requirements." Ambassador Thompson activated a portable display device that projected a holographic summary of human governmental structure. The Human Republic operates as a federal democracy with strong individual rights protections and local autonomy. We value scientific advancement, cultural diversity, and peaceful cooperation, but we maintain strict policies regarding self-determination and defensive capabilities. Thekval studied the display, noting the complexity of human political organization. Most species that achieved interstellar travel had developed relatively simple governmental structures. But humanity appeared to have maintained significant complexity while still achieving the coordination necessary for advanced space technology. "Your governmental structure appears compatible with Assembly principles," she said. "However, I notice references to defensive capabilities that seem quite robust." Captain Chen nodded. "Ambassador, humanity learned early in our history that peaceful intentions don't guarantee peaceful interactions. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. The Endeavor is a diplomatic vessel," Dr. Rodriguez added, "but it's designed to be capable of defending itself if necessary. We found it important to make first contact from a position of strength rather than vulnerability." Fleet Commander Zektar's tactical mind immediately focused on the implications. "Captain, are you saying that your diplomatic vessel is armed?" "Every human ship is designed with defensive capabilities," Captain Chen confirmed. "But the Endeavor's primary systems are focused on exploration, research, and diplomatic contact. Its defensive systems are entirely passive unless activated in response to direct threats." The distinction was subtle but important. The humans weren't claiming to be pacifists, but they were indicating that their default stance was peaceful. "Captain," Thekval said slowly, "would humanity be willing to participate in a formal presentation to the full Assembly? Your technological capabilities and perspective on galactic threats would be valuable to all member species." Captain Chen smiled again. "We'd be honored, Ambassador. When would be convenient?" As they began discussing scheduling and presentation formats, Thekval found herself recognizing that this conversation was already reshaping her understanding of galactic civilization. Humanity brought not just advanced technology, but a fundamentally different approach to the challenges of interstellar existence. The question was whether the rest of the galaxy was ready for that change. The main Assembly amphitheater had never hosted a more diverse or attentive audience. Representatives from 47 species filled every available seat, while millions more watched through real-time communication links to their home systems. The formal presentation of humanity to galactic civilization would be one of the most significant events in recorded history. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the central podium, her presence amplified by holographic projection systems that allowed every being in the massive chamber to see her clearly. Behind her, Dr. Tanaka prepared a series of technical demonstrations that had been carefully planned to inform without overwhelming their audience. "Honored representatives," Captain Chen began, "humanity is grateful for this opportunity to formally introduce ourselves to galactic civilization. We come not as conquerors or competitors, but as potential partners in the great endeavor of expanding knowledge and ensuring the survival of organic life throughout the galaxy." Ambassador Thekval noted the specific phrase, "survival of organic life." This suggested that humanity's concerns about galactic threats were even more serious than their initial private discussions had indicated. "Our species has followed a somewhat unique development path," Captain Chen continued. "For most of our recorded history, we have lived on a single world that our scientists classify as unusually challenging for the evolution of complex life. Dr. Rodriguez activated the first of their prepared displays, showing a three-dimensional model of Earth in orbit around the Sun. The image was beautiful, but the data annotations revealed information that caused murmurs of surprise throughout the amphitheater. Earth's gravity is significantly higher than the galactic average for worlds that produce spacefaring civilizations. Dr. Blank Rodriguez explained, "Our atmospheric pressure, magnetic field fluctuations, seismic activity, and weather patterns all exceed the norms by considerable margins." Science Director Yilith Mora's crystalline structure brightened with interest. "Are you classifying your homeworld as what we term a challenge world?" "Our classification system uses the term death world." Dr. Blank the Ford varies 2-3. Rodriguez replied matter-of-factly, "Earth scores 12 on our 14-point scale for environmental hostility to complex life." The chamber erupted in shocked harmonics, clicking mandibles, and rapid communication exchanges. A death world that had produced not just life, but a spacefaring civilization, was unprecedented in assembly records. Fleet Commander Zektar spoke over the commotion. "Dr. Rodriguez, are you suggesting that humanity evolved under conditions that would be lethal to most galactic species?" "Not lethal," Captain Chen corrected, "challenging. The conditions that shaped our evolution also shaped our approach to technology and survival. We learned early that the universe is not inherently safe, and that survival requires both cooperation and preparation for extreme conditions." Dr. Tanaka activated the next demonstration, showing detailed scans of the Endeavor's internal structure. The level of redundancy, armor protection, and emergency systems was staggering by galactic standards. Human engineering philosophy emphasizes multiple backup systems, damage tolerance, and the ability to function under extreme conditions. Dr. Bibio Virio Fils Tanaka explained, "We design our technology to work when everything goes wrong, not just when everything goes right." Trade Coordinator Vexinen of the Merchant Alliance leaned forward. "Dr. Tanaka, this design philosophy must require enormous resource investments. How do you maintain economic efficiency?" "We don't optimize for economic efficiency, Dr. Fischis," Tanaka replied. "We optimize for survival. Economic efficiency means nothing if your civilization doesn't survive to benefit from it." The implications of this statement rippled through the assembly. Most galactic civilizations had developed in relatively stable environments where gradual optimization was more valuable than robust preparation for catastrophic events. Captain Chen gestured to Dr. Tanaka, who activated a new display showing gravitational field manipulations around the Endeavor. The demonstrations that followed left the assembly audience speechless. Spacetime visibly warped around precisely controlled regions near the ship. Matter transmission occurred instantaneously across impossible distances. Energy levels that should have required the output of small stars were generated and contained within fields no larger than a shuttlecraft. These demonstrations represent practical applications of unified field theory, Dr. Tanaka explained. The mathematics involved are complex, but the underlying principle is relatively straightforward. Spacetime, matter, and energy are different expressions of the same fundamental phenomenon. When you understand the relationship, you can convert between them as needed. Science Director Elith Mora's harmonic resonance carried undertones that the translation systems identified as awe, mixed with barely controlled excitement. Dr. Flees Tanaka, what you're describing represents a complete revolution in our understanding of physics. How long did it take humanity to develop these applications? The theoretical framework was developed over approximately 2 centuries. Dr. RCES 4. Tanaka replied, "Practical applications began emerging about 50 years ago. The Endeavor represents what we consider mature implementation of the technology." The casual tone in which Dr. Tanaka described achievements that had eluded galactic civilization for millennia was almost more impressive than the achievements themselves. Captain Chen, Ambassador Thekval said carefully, "You mentioned concerns about galactic threats. Given the capabilities you've demonstrated, what could possibly concern humanity?" Captain Chen's expression grew serious. "Ambassador, Our deep space monitoring has detected signs of three distinct threats to organic life in this galaxy. The first appears to be a machine intelligence that systematically converts organic matter into computational substrate. The second shows signs of being a hive organism that consumes entire biospheres. The third, she paused. The third appears to exist partially outside normal spacetime and may represent technology from another universe entirely. The chamber fell absolutely silent. These were threats that no assembly sensor network had detected, described by a species that possessed technology to detect phenomena beyond galactic understanding. How certain are you of these assessments? Fleet Commander Zektar asked. High confidence on the first two threats, Dr. Rodriguez replied. The machine intelligence has eliminated at least 12 star systems in the galactic arm adjacent to ours. The hive organism is currently dormant, but our analysis suggests it awakens periodically to consume resources before returning to dormancy. The third threat, she exchanged glances with Captain Chen. The third threat is still being evaluated, but the energy signatures we've detected suggest capabilities that exceed even our own technology. Ambassador Thickval felt the weight of galactic civilization settling on her shoulders. What do you recommend? Preparation, Captain Chen said simply. The machine intelligence is approximately 300 years away at its current expansion rate. The hive organism's next awakening cycle is estimated at between 500 and 800 years. The third threat's timeline is unknown. And humanity is willing to help defend against these threats? Asked Fleet Commander Zektar. Commander, we consider the defense of organic life to be a fundamental responsibility, Captain Chen replied. We didn't develop our technology for conquest or domination. We developed it because we recognized that the universe contains threats that require unprecedented cooperation and capability to address. Dr. Tanaka activated a final demonstration showing the construction capabilities that humanity had developed in their outer system. Massive industrial facilities that could manufacture ship components larger than most assembly vessels. Automated mining operations that extracted resources from gas giant atmospheres. Fusion reactors that converted matter directly into useful energy at the stellar scale. These facilities represent our commitment to galactic defense, Dr. Tanaka explained. We can provide technology, resources, and manufacturing capability to any species willing to participate in a mutual defense alliance. Ambassador Thickval realized that humanity wasn't seeking membership in the Galactic Assembly as much as they were offering to become its protectors. The question was whether galactic civilization was ready to accept that the universe was far more dangerous than they had realized. Captain Chen, she said formally, the Galactic Assembly would be honored to welcome humanity as a member species. We also formally request that you share your threat assessments with our Security Council. Agreed, Ambassador. But I should warn you the preparations required will fundamentally change how galactic civilization operates. We're not just talking about military preparations. We're talking about industrial, technological, and social changes that will affect every member species. As the presentation concluded, Thickval found herself understanding that humanity's arrival marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. The galaxy had been a relatively peaceful place for millennia, but that peace had been based on ignorance of the threats that lay beyond their detection capabilities. Now they knew, and knowing meant they had to act. The age of galactic innocence was over. In the hours following humanity's presentation, the Galactic Assembly entered into emergency session. Representatives from 47 species debated the implications of the human revelations, while their homeworld governments analyzed the technical data that Captain Chen had shared. Ambassador Thickval found herself at the center of the most important diplomatic crisis in galactic history. The evidence that humanity had provided was overwhelming, but the implications were staggering. Accepting their assessment meant acknowledging that galactic civilization faced extinction-level threats that could only be addressed through unprecedented cooperation and militarization. The technical specifications they've shared are extraordinary. Science Director Elith Mora reported to the emergency session. Their fusion technology alone represents a tenfold improvement over our best capabilities. Their gravitational manipulation systems operate on principles that will require us to completely revise our understanding of physics. Fleet Commander Zektar added his assessment. From a military perspective, humanity represents the most significant force multiplication opportunity in assembly history. A single human vessel like the Endeavour could defend an entire star system against conventional threats. But can we trust them? Asked Defense Minister Korthak of the Hegemony Alliance. They've demonstrated capabilities that render our entire defensive doctrine obsolete. If their intentions are hostile, we have no means of resistance. Trade Coordinator Vexnan gestured with 3 of his appendages. Minister, if their intentions were hostile, this discussion would be moot. They could have simply destroyed this station and moved on to the next target. The fact that they're here talking suggests genuine peaceful intent. Ambassador Thekval reviewed the intelligence assessments one more time. Humanity's story was consistent, their technology demonstrations were genuine, and their threat assessments correlated with data that assembly sensors had dismissed as background noise or equipment malfunction. The question, she said to the gathered representatives, is not whether we trust humanity. The question is whether we trust their assessment of galactic threats. Ambassador, interjected cultural liaison Zenthera of the Symbiont Collective. I've been analyzing the psychological profiles of the human delegation. Their fear responses, stress indicators, and behavioral patterns all suggest genuine concern about external threats. Unless they are capable of deception beyond anything we've previously encountered, they believe what they're telling us. The debate continued for another hour before Ambassador Thekval called for formal consideration of humanity's proposals. The package was comprehensive: immediate membership in the Galactic Assembly, sharing of human technology with member species, establishment of joint defense manufacturing facilities, and creation of a unified command structure for threat response. In exchange, humanity requested access to assembly historical databases, cultural exchange programs, and formal mutual defense agreements with all member species. Before we vote, Thekval announced, I want to review one more piece of information that Captain Chen shared privately with the Security Council. She activated the chamber's holographic display, showing a stellar map that highlighted the locations of the threats humanity had detected. The machine intelligence's expansion pattern formed a clear line toward the galactic core. The hive organism's estimated territory encompassed dozens of star systems. The third threat's energy signature appeared to be moving through dimensions that intersected with normal space at random intervals. According to human calculations, Thekval continued, if these threats continue their current patterns, they will reach assembly space within the timeframes Captain Chen described. The machine intelligence will encounter our outer colonies in approximately 3 centuries. The hive organism's next awakening will occur within 6 centuries, and its expansion pattern suggests it will consume everything between its current location and the galactic core. The chamber erupted in urgent communications as representatives contacted their homeworld governments. The reality of existential threats was finally sinking in. Fleet Commander Zektar spoke over the commotion. Ambassador, what does humanity estimate as our survival probability without their assistance? Thekval accessed the classified analysis that Captain Chen had provided. Less than 15% against the machine intelligence, less than 5% against the hive organism, 0% against the third threat. The silence that followed was profound. And with human assistance? Asked Science Director Eilith Mora. 60% against the machine intelligence, 40% against the hive organism, unknown against the third threat, but significantly improved. Trade Coordinator Vexen made the gesture that indicated formal proposal. I move that the Assembly accept humanity's membership and alliance proposals immediately. Seconded, called Defense Minister Korthak. The vote was unanimous. As the formal agreements were being drafted, Ambassador Thekval received a private communication request from Captain Chen. The human leader appeared on her personal display, her expression carrying the weight of species responsibility. Ambassador, I want to thank you for the Assembly's trust. I also want to prepare you for what comes next. What do you mean, Captain? The preparations required for galactic defense will change everything. Industrial production will need to increase by orders of magnitude. Multiple species will need to relocate to more defensible systems. Military training will become mandatory for significant portions of the population. The galaxy you've known is about to disappear. Thekval felt a moment of uncertainty. Captain, are you certain these preparations are necessary? Ambassador, I hope we're wrong about the threats. I hope our preparations turn out to be unnecessary paranoia. But if we're right, and we don't prepare, then everything dies. The stark assessment hung between them for a moment before Captain Chen continued. There's something else you should know. The Endeavor isn't humanity's only diplomatic vessel. We've made contact with civilizations in other galactic regions, and we're coordinating a galaxy-wide response to these threats. The Assembly represents approximately 12% of galactic civilization. We need everyone working together if we're going to survive. Ambassador Thekval realized that humanity's arrival at the Assembly wasn't the beginning of first contact, it was the culmination of a process that had been occurring throughout the galaxy. How many civilizations have you contacted? 47 so far, with another dozen scheduled for contact within the next year. Some have been cooperative, others. Captain Chen's expression darkened. Others have responded poorly to the news. Meaning? Meaning some civilizations would rather try to destroy the messengers than accept the message. We've had to defend ourselves 3 times so far. The implication was clear. Not every species would choose cooperation when faced with existential threats. Some would choose denial, aggression, or attempts to eliminate competition for resources. Captain, does humanity need military assistance from the Assembly? Captain Chen smiled, but it wasn't entirely reassuring. Ambassador, humanity appreciates the offer, but we can defend ourselves. What we need from the Assembly is industrial cooperation, scientific collaboration, and cultural exchange. We need partners, not protected territories. As the communication ended, Ambassador Thekval found herself contemplating the magnitude of the change that was about to sweep through galactic civilization. Humanity had arrived offering partnership and protection, but they were also fundamentally altering the basic assumptions upon which galactic society had been built. The age of peaceful isolation was ending. The age of unified defense was beginning. Whether galactic civilization would survive, the transition remained to be seen. 6 months after humanity's formal introduction to the Galactic Assembly, the galaxy had begun to transform in ways that few could have imagined. Ambassador Thekval stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Defense Coordination Center, watching human and assembly ships working together in the massive orbital facility that now surrounded the former assembly station. The scale of the construction project was staggering. What had once been a modest diplomatic station was now the hub of an industrial complex that dwarfed anything previously seen in assembly space. Human construction techniques, combined with assembly resource networks and multi-species labor forces, had created something unprecedented in galactic history. Status Report Director Thekval said to the facility's new commander. Director Chen Primi, an artificial intelligence personality that served as the coordination center for the Combined Defense Initiative. All construction projects proceeding ahead of schedule, Ambassador, the AI replied through the chamber's communication systems. Industrial output has increased by 340% since human technology integration began. Defensive installations are being deployed in accordance with threat assessment priorities. Through the observation deck's transparent barriers, Thekval could see the evidence of that industrial expansion. Massive manufacturing stations produced components for ships that combined human gravitational drive technology with assembly sensor systems and weapons platforms. Resource processing facilities converted raw materials from gas giant mining operations into the exotic alloys required for advanced armor and structural components. Most impressively, the shipyard facilities were producing vessels that exceeded even human capabilities. The fusion of human engineering principles with assembly knowledge and multi-species perspectives had resulted in breakthrough innovations that neither civilization could have achieved alone. Any updates on the threat monitoring? Thekval asked. The machine intelligence continues its expansion pattern, but at a slightly reduced rate, Director Chen, Prime reported. Our analysis suggests it may be encountering resistance from previously unknown civilizations in the outer spiral arm. The hive organism remains dormant, but we've detected increased energy emissions from its estimated location. The third threat. The AI paused in what Thekval had learned was Chen Prime's way of indicating uncertainty. The third threat appears to be responding to our preparations. That was concerning news. Responding how? Energy signature intensity has increased by 200% since large-scale construction began. The phenomenon appears to be monitoring our activities. Before Thekval could respond, Captain Chen's voice came over the facility's communication system. Ambassador, could you join me in the Strategic Planning Center? We've received some interesting intelligence that affects our timeline. Thekval made her way through corridors that bustled with activity from dozens of different species. The integration of galactic civilization had proceeded more smoothly than anyone had dared hope, largely because the existential nature of the threats had overridden most territorial or cultural conflicts. The Strategic Planning Center was a marvel of combined technology. Human holographic projection systems created three-dimensional displays of galactic threat patterns, while assembly data processing networks analyzed patterns across timescales that human computers couldn't manage efficiently. Representatives from various species provided cultural and biological insights that affected strategic calculations. Captain Chen stood at the center of the chamber, reviewing data streams from monitoring stations positioned throughout the galaxy. Her expression was thoughtful but concerned. Ambassador, we've confirmed contact with the machine intelligence. Thekval felt her breathing apparatus seize momentarily. Direct contact? One of our deep space monitoring platforms was approached by a machine intelligence scout. The platform managed to record the encounter before being converted. Captain Chen activated a display showing the final transmission from the monitoring station. The images were disturbing. The scout appeared to be a shifting mass of mechanical components that reorganized themselves continuously. When it touched the monitoring platform, the conversion process was immediate. The station's material was absorbed and reformed into additional machine intelligence mass. Analysis of the conversion process confirms our worst fears. Dr. Tanaka reported from her position at the technical analysis station. The machine intelligence doesn't just consume technology, it converts organic matter into computational substrate. Any biological components on the monitoring platform were incorporated into its processing matrix. How long before it reaches inhabited systems? Thekval asked. Based on its current expansion rate and the resistance it's encountering, approximately 250 years, Captain Chen replied. But that assumes its expansion rate remains constant. If it develops improved conversion techniques or encounters less resistance, the timeline could be significantly shorter. Science Director Elith Mora, who had been assigned to the Defense Coordination Center as the Assembly's primary scientific liaison, activated additional displays. Captain, our analysis of the hive organism has also produced concerning results. The energy emissions we detected appear to be preparatory activity for emergence from dormancy. How much time? Captain Chen asked. Unknown, but significantly less than our original estimates, possibly as little as 2 centuries instead of 5 to 8. Thekval felt the weight of galactic responsibility settling on her shoulders. Are our preparations adequate for an accelerated timeline? Captain Chen studied the production reports and defensive capability assessments before responding. We'll need to accelerate everything. Industrial expansion, ship construction, defensive installation deployment, and military training programs. We also need to expand our diplomatic contact with other galactic civilizations. How many more civilizations are out there? Thekval asked. Our latest estimates suggest approximately 30 major civilization clusters, plus countless minor species and isolated colonies, Captain Chen replied. Some are more advanced than the Assembly, others are less developed. All will need to be contacted and integrated into the defense initiative if we're going to have sufficient resources to address the threats. Dr. Rodriguez, who had been analyzing cultural integration patterns, looked up from her workstation. Captain, we're receiving reports of resistance to integration from several species. Some are concerned about losing cultural autonomy, others are suspicious of human motives. Captain Chen nodded grimly. Expected, but problematic. Do we have enough diplomatic resources to address the concerns? Possibly. Ambassador Thekval's success with the assembly integration has provided a model that other species find reassuring. However, some civilizations appear to be actively hostile to cooperation efforts. Meaning we may need to consider the possibility that some species will choose to fight us rather than fight with us, Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Galactic civilization was fragmenting into those who accepted the threat assessments and those who refused to believe them. Worse, some of the species that refused cooperation were themselves technologically advanced enough to pose significant obstacles to defensive preparations. Recommendations? Captain Chen asked. Ambassador Thekval spoke carefully. From a diplomatic perspective, we need to continue expansion of cooperation while minimizing confrontation with resistant species. However, we cannot allow resistance to compromise defensive preparations. Agreed, we'll continue diplomatic efforts, but we'll also begin contingency planning for scenarios where not all of galactic civilization cooperates with defense initiatives. As the strategic session continued, Thekval found herself recognizing that humanity's emergence had created not just new opportunities, but new responsibilities that no species had ever faced before. They were now responsible not just for defending their own civilizations, but for preserving the concept of organic life in a galaxy that contained threats beyond imagination. The question was whether they could unite enough of galactic civilization to succeed, or whether the very diversity that made the galaxy worth saving would prevent the cooperation necessary to save it. Looking at the activity surrounding them, species that had never worked together now, collaborating on the largest construction project in galactic history, Thekval allowed herself a moment of cautious optimism. Humanity had shown them that impossible things could be accomplished when necessity demanded it. Perhaps galactic civilization would prove to be more adaptable than anyone had dared hope. The next few centuries would tell the story. 5 years after first contact, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the HRS Unity, the newest and most advanced vessel in the combined galactic defense fleet. Around her, a crew that represented dozens of different species worked together with an efficiency that would have been unimaginable just years before. The Unity itself was a testament to what galactic cooperation could accomplish. The ship combined human engineering philosophy with assembly materials science, crystalline collective harmonic resonance technology, hegemony alliance adaptive systems, and innovations from a dozen other species. The result was a vessel that exceeded the capabilities of any single civilization's technology. Status report, she called to her integrated crew. All systems operational, Captain, replied Commander Thekval, 7, one of Ambassador Thekval's offspring who had joined the integrated command program. Gravitational drives showing optimal efficiency, defense grid coordination with fleet elements at maximum effectiveness, long-range sensors detecting normal deep space conditions. Captain Chen nodded, reviewing the tactical displays that showed the positions of the combined defense fleet. 1,200 vessels of various sizes and capabilities, all working together under unified command protocols. It was the largest cooperative military force in galactic history. Any updates from the forward monitoring stations? She asked. Lieutenant Commander Elith Mora Prime, the crystalline offspring of Science Director Elith Mora, activated the communication displays. Captain, Monitoring Station Alpha 7 reports continued machine intelligence expansion, but at reduced rates. Our defensive installations appear to be having a deterrent effect. Station Beta 3 confirms that the hive organism remains dormant, but with increasing energy emissions. And the third threat? No change in behavior patterns, but increased monitoring intensity. The phenomenon appears to be studying our defensive preparations. Captain Chen studied the threat assessment displays with satisfaction tempered by caution. The defensive preparations were proceeding ahead of schedule, but the timeline remained tight. More importantly, the cultural integration of galactic civilization was exceeding all projections. What had begun as a desperate alliance against existential threats had evolved into something unprecedented. A truly unified galactic civilization that preserved the diversity of its component species while working toward common goals. "Captain," came a communication from the flagship GDS Harmony. "This is Admiral Thekval. All fleet elements report ready for the next phase of expansion." The next phase involved contact with civilizations beyond the local galactic region. Humanity's monitoring networks had detected signs of organized resistance to the machine intelligence in adjacent spiral arms, suggesting that other species had also recognized the threats and begun their own preparations. "Acknowledged, Admiral. Signal all ships to prepare for dimensional transit to the contact coordinates." As the massive fleet began its transition into folded space, Captain Chen reflected on the changes that humanity's emergence had brought to the galaxy. What had started as a simple first contact had become the foundation for the largest cooperative endeavor in the history of organic life. The threats were still out there, still approaching, still representing existential challenges that would test every capability galactic civilization could muster. But now those challenges would be met by a unified response that drew upon the best qualities of dozens of different species. Humanity had brought advanced technology and strategic warning to the galaxy. But perhaps more importantly, they had brought the perspective that survival required not just individual excellence, but cooperative achievement that transcended the boundaries between species. As the Unity and its escort fleet emerged from dimensional transit near the coordinates of the unknown civilization, Captain Chen felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and responsibility that came with representing galactic civilization to new species. The message they carried was simple. Organic life faced unprecedented threats, but those threats could be addressed through unprecedented cooperation. The question was whether each new species they encountered would choose cooperation or isolation when faced with the reality of galactic threats. Looking at the diversity of beings working together on her bridge, Captain Chen was optimistic about the answer. If species as different as humans, Korthari, and crystalline collectives could work together effectively, then perhaps any species could be integrated into the growing alliance. The galaxy was vast, the threats were real, but the capacity for cooperation appeared to be unlimited. And, in the end, that capacity for cooperation might be the one advantage that organic life possessed over the forces that sought to destroy it. The HRS Unity and its fleet began broadcasting first contact protocols to the unknown civilization ahead, carrying with them the hopes and combined knowledge of dozens of species, and the promise that no one had to face the darkness alone. Humanity's first contact with the galaxy had become galactic civilization's first contact with its own unlimited potential. The real adventure was just beginning.